Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for being with us so early. My name is Anastasiya Rudенко, and I coordinate Recovery Window Media Network, the first and only media network in Ukraine that informs about the processes of reconstruction in Ukraine. We bring together media organizations, NGOs, and analytical think tanks to strengthen each other and to have impacts on recovery processes. And today we are here to talk about a question that sounds simple, but actually is very difficult. How to communicate reconstruction through media so that it really sinks in and people, whether stakeholders or outsiders, will perceive reconstruction not as a bunch of mismatched facts, but as holistic processes that understand and wanna participate in it. And this Сайд-івент is organized as Сайд-івent on Lviv Media Forum with the support of EU for Reconstruction, Stream 1, and we are very grateful for it. The main idea is that reconstruction is not happening after the war. We are all witness that it is happening already right now. In our realities, a building can be rebuilt and hit again, unfortunately. A community can start rebuilding and still live under the threat. And a donor-funded project can bring hope, but if it will be communicated improperly, it will create wrong expectations and stereotypes. That is why today we are here to speak honestly in this circle of media professionals, of partners, and to understand how we can help each other and how can we, what is still missing in order to do it more effectively. Please, I want to invite and it will be very not traditional kind of panel discussion. I want to be our room, the proper space for discussion, invite you to share your remarks and deliver your speeches. That is why the event will be organized as fishbowl. We will have our first round of speakers, and then I will open the floor to share your thoughts, your experiences, because I see here a lot of also our network members. In general, Recovery Window Media Network consists of more than 130 organizations. Today with us are here who are the most dedicated, who are the participants of LMF, and we traditionally do our monthly online gatherings, Zdybanki, but it is finally we are here for offline interaction, but also if you are if you feel that you want to contribute, please, it will be the space for it. So, please, I want to invite here speakers Minal, Emmanuel, and Olga for the first round of questions. Yes. And Ksenia also will be with us. So, first I want to speak with Minal Thakur. Minal is experienced and star in solution journalism because she is trainer in solution journalism, a program lead at Transitions. And Minal, you work with solution journalism and with newsroom in different countries, in different contexts, and in the context where public trust is also fragile and narratives are polarized, and journalists need to be very careful how they frame people's experience. So that is why, and now we are precisely in this point when solution journalism may seem like a very powerful approach to address reconstruction, but still, my question to you will be, how do we cover solutions and in general, yes, stories that are still largely in progress and eventually, let's face it, might fail?
What do you mean by fail?
We are here today with us, we're also investigative journalists. So we know that we have to monitor and control public spendings, because what can be seen like future success stories can be, we as journalists can have a lot, and watchdogs can have a lot of questions to it. That is why how to report on it to avoid some wrong and empty hopes.
I mean, if I could add.
You can take mine.
If I can just add to maybe my understanding of your question before I answer it, I think failure here is also just literally how we view failure, that probably there was an intention of an initiative to work a certain way. Let's say it could be an IDP center that was set up somewhere, and the expectation was that it would serve the community that was migrating to a certain area, and probably a few years later you realize that maybe it wasn't planned well, maybe financially it wasn't sustainable, or maybe it wasn't really serving the people who were moving there. It was more focused on adults, but it ended up being a lot of children who moved there. So this kind of expectation of the solution to work not being met with what it was planned for, if I understand correctly.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Yes, that's a very important question, and I think I would start by saying that even though there is this fear of things might not working out in the near future, it's still very, very important to actively report on these stories of you can call them reconstruction, recovery, resilience, survival, fight, since we're talking about fighting, freezing, or flight. And it's also important because, of course, there is a lot of documentation of the war and the unfortunate destruction and the death toll that needs to be talked about. But what's also important is to actively also document the efforts of the people who are staying back, or even the ones who've moved out and are still making efforts to mobilize. How do they live their everyday life? How do they come together and create initiatives to help each other out? So you do need to acknowledge, and I would say even honor by way of acknowledging these kinds of efforts for reconstruction or even everyday survival. So that's why I think it's very important. Now, coming to your question, maybe I can break it into 2-3 parts to really understand how we should do it. First of all, I think the principles of solution journalism itself answer why it's important to still tell these stories, because as opposed to misconceptions about solutions-oriented journalism, that it is only positive news, it's empty hope, and it's just happy stories. Solution journalism really distinguishes itself from this PR kind of journalism because it's based in evidence that the particular solution or response that you're reporting on is actually working, because you not only present the evidence of impact, which could either be, in this case, you might not have data, quantitative data to prove that this many percentage of people, again going back to the example of the IDP center, for example, were able to be employed or educated, but you will still have anecdotal evidence from the people, and that is equally important. Voices are equally important as sources of evidence, as voices to show that impact is happening. And of course, then it's the job of the journalist to ensure that all voices are represented, not just the ones who benefited from the solution, but also the ones who got left out, and why, and how can you then make it better. So that's one way of looking at it. And also, there are 4 pillars of solution journalism, and I don't want to make this a theory session, but it's important to know about it because we also, when we report on solutions, we do focus on what are the possible limitations of this particular initiative, because the idea is not only for the initiative to work in one community that is currently facing a challenge, but there must be, and there always are, many other regions or communities who are facing similar challenges, and they would be able to read your well-written, well-researched, evidence-based story of what was the process of a particular solution to be implemented, how were funds and people mobilized, what was the evidence of impact, and lastly, what are the limitations that the people who are working on the solution can already see? What is the resistance that you could face? So it could be maybe there's the migration patterns are not very reliable. Maybe the people who are hired to work in the center have very different skills and capabilities. Or funding, maybe after 2 years you don't know how this will survive and people have already moved somewhere with the hope that there would be support. So it's important to lay out these facts credibly so that you don't end up making big promises. And we also avoid using words while doing solutions-oriented reporting, like saying, let's say Lviv has found the perfect solution for Ukrainians migrating from the east to the west. It's not perfect, but it's a response. So let's also be careful of overselling something as the magic bullet solution for a problem. That's also one way of being careful while doing these stories. And one thing that I find very fascinating about this approach is that just like any incident in our life where we encounter failure, we often learn a lesson from it, right? It's just not a failure, it's a stepping stone to something. And in solutions journalism, we really make sure that we never use the word a failed solution. Rather, we try to use the word instructive failure. So there was an initiative, there was an intention to create a response for a social problem. Because of certain circumstances which externally maybe were not in our control and we could not foresee them, or internally there was maybe a bit of lack of foresight in the planning, how is it an instructive failure? What are the lessons that you can actually learn from this particular reconstruction project so that going forward these mistakes are not repeated? And this kind of documentation is very important not only for the people within Ukraine, but unfortunately there are so many parallel conflicts happening in the world right now, and we all know that the world is looking up to Ukraine for inspiration and for solutions, and maybe if you flip the lens of calling it a failure and rather do maybe a follow-up story. So let's say 2 years later you realize that this reconstruction effort unfortunately didn't work out. It's also a very good space to do a follow-up story and say that this is the instructive failure, this is what we learned from it, and this is how we should move forward. And others who are looking up to you would also use that as a case study. So I think that's why it's important to talk about it, and hopefully these are strategies to avoid getting into the trap of only thinking about what if we fail, what if we don't.
Excellent, and thank you, Minal, because we as Recovery Window Media Network are already also informing not only as in investigative stream, but also pushing our network members to do covering reconstruction processes in the format of solution journalism, and we will talk about it later. And I think, but now I wanna move from methodological, like some pillars to someone who already has experience and mission before, perspective of someone who has to explain Ukraine to audiences abroad. So Emmanuel, you have been reporting for French and international audiences about what's going on in Ukraine for several years, and I wanna also, for example, your work on access to water on the frontline territories. It's also about, for me, about reconstruction phase 0 or phase 1, very initial stage, but still it is about doing something in order to life being available to live in this place. That is why, please, to tell, but when to report about reconstruction processes, I want to ask you how to avoid false misunderstanding that, like, not to show reconstruction, especially for audiences abroad, as normalization, because there is no, like, not to show the misleading sign that the war is ending. Because first of all, Ukraine obviously needs help in terms of in order to defend ourselves. But what about? But how do you picture reconstruction, and what is your recommendation? How to do it, especially when we report abroad?
First, thanks a lot for having me. I'm also really happy to see you all coming this early to participate to this visual discussion. And thank you also that you mentioned this reporting about access to water. And indeed, we talk, first I would like to address maybe something that's the elephant in the room. We talk a lot about how resilient Ukrainians are. They are admirable, they are resilient. No, they are trying to survive. We would all do that, being in those circumstances. And I think there's a pitfall that we also as journalists should be careful not to fall into, not to necessarily emphasize this resilience, which is here, but it is survival, and instead show the daily struggle of people who are just trying to live. And when we talk about access to water, I've reported when the area of Pokrovsk, east of Pokrovsk, was still reachable. I've reported in Novohrodivka, maybe some of you will know where it is, with an NGO that had displaced access to water to that town. So within the building of culture, there was a whole underground structure in order to provide thousands of people who are still living here with drinkable water. We think of those places as frontline places. They are very abstract for people who are not in Ukraine. They are not places that they relate to. They are just on the front line. They are places of destruction. They are grey, they are dusty, bloody, but they don't see the beauty of Donbass as people who are lucky enough to see. Before they were destroyed, they see those places as a place of desolation, but they are places of life. So when we talk about reconstruction, it's also reconstruction for people from the east who came first to the nearest, safest place, and that was the case of Novohrodivka. It had people from Chasiv Yar, from Avdiivka, who were coming here thinking they were far enough from the zero line. I was with that NGO at the beginning of the summer. I did this report showing those water pumps, those water filters. 2 months later, those installations had to be dismantled, and they had to be installed in Mejova, a bit further from the front line, which at the time felt really safe and really far away from the front line. It's no longer the case. And as journalists, often newsrooms, we see this story as a hopeful story. Oh, Novohrodivka has a water treatment system, water filtration system. This is great. Yes, but it's only temporary. Yet this reconstruction was necessary because thousands of people relied on it. And I was able, because I work for newsrooms who often listen when I tell them this is important, I was able to follow up what you were mentioning. That it hasn't failed because it was in Novohrodivka and it had to be dismantled. Yet we cannot just show this story, being like, oh, those people are sorted, and we go to the next story. We have to remind and be mindful when we do that this is a temporary solution that is thought in an emergency situation, but this will only last as much as Ukraine is able to defend itself in that area, and then we're going to have to move further away from the front line to bring water to people. So this was, it also taught me a lot. Reconstruction is not about the future. It can be also about the immediate present of people. And I'm talking about water, but maybe also for people who don't live in Ukraine and who might be surprised to see those wooden panels on windows. This is also about surviving in your own flat. When your flat has been struck by a missile, by a drone, you still have to live there. You don't automatically move somewhere else or to a refugee center. They are overwhelmed. So you might have to go through the winter with wooden panels at your window with minus 25, 30 degrees. And when there are NGOs or when there is EU funding that funds those panels, funds the workers who come to install it, this is also a reconstruction that is instrumental in your daily survival. So I think that's something you have to pay attention to.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for bringing it, and also it is a perfect bridge to Olga now, because just recently, after the recent attack on Kiev, the windows in the Olga's flat in Kiev were dismantled, and NGO helped to replace them by with OSB, just like on the T-shirt and banner you can see. So it's again a lot of now in Ukraine is on the shoulders of NGO sector. We can see it. But Olga, my question is to Olga is the head of content in Recovery Window Media Network. So Olga is working on an everyday basis with information from our partners, regional media outlets on the ground, and our own data on reconstruction. That is why I wanna ask Olga about helicopter view, how media are actually covering reconstruction now in Ukraine, and what is changing also with months, with years already of full-scale invasion. And Olga will speak in Ukrainian, but Ksenia will assist her in order to translate in English. And also after Olga, I will invite you to share your perspectives, and again you can also do it either in English or in Ukrainian. Yeah.
Добрий день усім. Я почну з того, що вікно відновлення на початку своєї діяльності створення контенту про відновлення стало одним з своїх основних напрямків роботи.
So hello everyone, and I would like to say that when Recovery Window was founded, so it has one direction it was focused on.
У 2024 році, наприклад, ми завдяки підтримці міжнародних донорів змогли дати 92 субгранти до регіональним медіа на створення контенту, і вони створили більше ніж 800 різного формату матеріалів, і ці матеріали отримали 24 мільйони охоплень.
So and since 2024 we have awarded 92 sub-grants to organizations that generate content, and so around 800 pieces of content have been created, and this content got 24 million views.
У 2025 році ситуація змінилася, наші можливості стали більш обмеженими, але ми продовжували підтримувати медіа більш точково, зокрема у створенні розслідувального жанру матеріалів і у висвітленні екологічних наслідків російської агресії.
But in 2025 the situation has changed, and we were limited in finances, and we were focused on helping media who deal with investigation and also on ecological consequences of Russian invasion.
Тож, як ми бачимо, як зараз медіа висвітлюють відновлення? Передусім хочу сказати, що медіа стали ближчими до громадської дії.
So, and first of all, what changed in covering reconstruction by our media? Media became closer to public.
Що я маю на увазі? Вони не тільки інформують, а вони їх більше спрямовані те, щоб прям допомогти людям, які читають їхні медіа. Особливо це стосується медіа із прифронтових громад, із релокованих громад, саме регіональних медіа. Вони створюють, не тільки пишуть матеріали, але й створюють обговорення, створюють чат-боти, збирають контакти для людей, допомагають буквально людям, пояснюють їм, куди їм звертатися, щоб отримати допомогу.
And right now, media, they're not just covering and informing people, but they're trying to help. They organize discussions, chatbots to provide people with information where they can apply for some support.
Тож, якщо говорити про формати, в яких зараз створюються матеріали, першим я назву інструкції та експлейнери. Це може здатися досить нудним жанром, але вони все ще потрібні, особливо такі, які висвітлюють не тільки можливості певних програм підтримки, а й їхні обмеження.
And the first format, it may sound quite boring. The format of content, those are instructions and explainers that explain programs, like opportunities that programs provide, but also their limitations.
Наведу приклад. Одне з офіційних повідомлень нашого міністерства, одного з міністерств, звучало як ВПО з ТОТ можуть дізнатися свою чергу на житловий ваучер. Але наш партнер Вільне Радіо, одне з якраз релокованих медіа, створило свій заголовок, назвавши його деякі ВПО з ТОТ можуть дізнатися свої можливі черги. І це лише одне слово, яке насправді змінює багато.
And sometimes one word can change a lot. For example, the title of content from the ministry was that IDPs can learn about like residential program, like people that live in temporarily occupied territories, and Media Free Radio, they changed and they added just one word that some IDPs can participate in the program, and this one word changes the meaning.
Тому що насправді дуже ця програма зараз доступна для лише однієї категорії людей, і власне таким чином медіа не створює хибних очікувань і не створює розчарування, яке може спіткати людей.
And actually this program is available only for one category of people, and so correct titles, they don't create false expectations for people.
Тепер назву другий жанр, це, звичайно, моніторингова і розслідувальна журналістика. І як ми можемо побачити, власне, наші партнери регіональні медіа активно створюють новини, звертаючись про закупівлі, звертаючись до реєстрів.
And the second direction of content is investigation and monitoring, and our journalists, they investigate information about procurements.
Вони створюють, крім того, що базуються, звичайно, на цих даних, вони виїжджають в поля, спілкуються з мешканцями, тобто покривають, власне, розслідувальну частину роботи, але при цьому і шукають рішення, як це можна було зробити прозоріше, який може бути конструктивний шлях в цій ситуації.
Of course, they check the data, but they also go to the field and communicate with people, and they also try to find solution how this could have been done more transparent.
І останній жанр, який я назву, це репортажі. На жаль, за останній час, оскільки він став дуже дорогим і небезпечним, особливо коли йдеться про репортажі з прифронтових громад.
And the third direction, it's just, I call it news, how we call it in English.
Reportages. Yeah.
Reports, yeah, but this kind of content is it's very dangerous to create, to go to the front line.
Але це насправді дуже важливий жанр, який дозволяє людям, які виїхали вимушено з цієї території, розуміти, що відбувається в їх рідному регіоні, а всім іншим розуміти, що взагалі відбувається, бачити це на власні очі.
But this type of content is very important as people who were displaced, they can see what's going on the territory that they left, and other people just can find out about the events.
Ну і на завершення скажу, що, на жаль, зараз репортажів про відбудову менше, ніж репортажів про руйнування, і це не погана робота журналістів, а це наша реальність, на жаль, коли навіть те, що вже відбудували, може бути знову зруйновано.
And unfortunately, there are less reports on reconstruction. There are more reports on destruction, and it's not because journalists do their work badly. It's just our reality today, and the building that has been reconstructed can be hit again.
So, and Olga, thank you so much for providing this overview. And that is exactly the point when I want to bring you from the room to share your experiences, your short examples. And let me explain, so we are done with the first round, and let me explain how the fishbowl works. Because I will bring one question to you, to the room. And for example, let Minal and Emmanuel please stay, and instead of Olga, we will have one empty chair, one empty mic. And please, I see my colleagues, I see a lot of interested, and please share your thoughts. Please keep it short, because let it be like a few minutes, up to 3 minutes would be perfect to share your example, your contribution. So, and the question is, from your own experience, what is the hardest part in of the communicating reconstruction right now? Or what is already working well? And what would help you to do it better? Because again, we as Recovery Media Network have the goal to facilitate this process and to help you. You are practitioners on the ground. So please, what practices, what formats, what approaches you see, what works and what does not work? So, who wanna start? Okay, yeah, please.
Thank you. Hi everyone, nice to meet you all. I'm Natalia Fibrik, I'm from Berlin, working as a correspondent for Ukrainian television, one from there, and also run my own non-profit organization. We do energy aid to Ukraine, to Ukrainian communities. The organization is called Ukraine to Power. Mikhail Berkin is with me right now, helping us a lot to communicate also needs of communities and also of Kyiv during this very, very harsh winter. Talking about supporting communities, is kind of complicated when we have all these corruption scandals, Midas, and so on. And I remember it very well, participating in the last Rebuild conference in Poland. And it was right at the time as this corruption was all in the media. And even then we had pictures of participants of Ukrainian energy minister and so on, who had to participate, of course, they were not there. So talking to foreigners, to foreign companies, like come to Ukraine, make a business, because I also think it's kind of problematic to talking only about supporting and aid and help. We have to create solutions for them to make it interesting to participate. So first thing what we have to do is kind of people abroad see, for example, in this winter, the situation is incredibly hard for residents in Kyiv, not only in Kyiv, but I was communicating Kyiv because our organization is here, our team is here, so we were able to help. And it was kind of hard to Germans to cope with that. So they really wanted to help, and we are providing them the instrument. We are your hands, your legs, your we are there. We're gonna help, but you help us to help. That's the first thing. So we are providing solution. Second thing, we have to talk to business to find some kind of collaboration. It has to be interesting, And my biggest problem is to talking about that when we have all these corruption scandals in the country. So it would be really interesting, because I think there are questions you are also have to and to answer and to find some answers. So what do you do about that?
Actually, thank you so much for bringing that up, because we are in the middle of that blowing up with that scandal and a certain person being currently in pre-trial detention. It's very interesting, for example, when we had this strike on Kyiv the other night. Some people I was talking to in the newsroom were like, "Oh, and what about this arrest? Can we do a second question on it?" That would mean me talking with pictures of destruction and moving on corruption. And you only have an attention span that is limited when you have 3 minutes of airtime, for example. On Thursday morning, for me, the news was to talk about the 24 people, which we didn't know about yet. But the immediate news is the destruction, is the fact that there's no ceasefire that will hold and that Russia has no intention to gear towards peace. That's the immediate news. That's what impacts people now. Now, we have to talk about those corruption scandals, but we also have to make sure that Western audiences who might see it as this country where corruption is rampant at all levels of societies and that kind of narrative, we have to make sure for people to understand that those scandals come out. 20 years ago, they might not have come out.
Yes.
It is ugly to witness people at the very high level of power misusing funds, or also it's a betrayal of the population, which is the target of bombings. But also it comes out. The work of NABU and SAPO is ongoing. They are able to hold people accountable, and that's the interesting thing to report on. Of course, it's not pleasant for people who work in NGOs and who try to get funds to always have to be embarrassed about such and such person in the government. But 20 years ago in Ukraine, it would have been difficult even to report on it. And now we can do so, and I think it's a painful process for Ukrainians, but it's ongoing. And in that sense, I think it's just it's a positive development, as painful as I imagine it can be to be a Ukrainian witnessing those scandals unfolding.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for bringing this, and this is powerful message also from Manuel. Please, the next. I see Руслана flagged Громадське радіо.
Executive producer.
Yes, executive producer. Thank you. Yeah, the director.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ruslana Vyatska. I'm executive director of Громадське Radio. It's a Ukrainian media outlet organization, and we are not only media. We are in connection with the temporary occupied territories because we have transmitters. It's a technical radio system in the frontline territories, and people who live in the occupied territories by Russia can listen not only Russian propaganda and listen to Громадське Radio and balance and true information. I have some notes in my phone about two important podcasts about reconstruction in Ukraine because every day we work with audience in frontline and temporary occupied territories, and a very important question for this audience, when and how can I return home? And it's very important that all information is collected in one place, and that's why we produce a podcast project called Там, де дім, Where Home Is, and it's a podcast for people who lost their homes in the frontline territories or occupied territories, and we talk about practical things, how competition works, what support programs we have, how to protect legal rights, and what opportunities people have after displacement, and have a big connect with our audience because we understand it's very important and very practical things for them. An example, in our episodes we speak with human rights experts, representatives of local communities, and we try to explain difficult topics in a simple language. And we have another podcast about reconstruction. It's called Eco Future Today, and it's a podcast about green rebuilding in Ukraine because it's a big part of reconstruction too. And it talks about energy, nature, transport, and smart cities. And the guests are experts and people who works on these topics. And they also explain difficult topics in a simple way. And finally, I live in Bucha, and I see rebuilding and reconstruction every day. Fortunately, during 3 or 4 years, and I understand how important to speak about it because it gives hope to reconstruction and rebuilding another people in another cities.
Thank you. And doing it like you described in a very practical way, like handy instructions, in order to like concrete guides. I think it's very important for people, especially in grief, in trauma, how to like not to provide something like a story, brave story. I don't know, but what to do. Like what I see that that your podcast was very much about it. Yeah.
Yes, because people know many information about it. Yes, because we have this information, and they have a question still.
Yeah. Thank you, Ruslana. So, please. Vlad is Solution Journalism Media Outlet Rubrika.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Vlad. I'm from Rubrika, first solution media in Ukraine, and yeah, I work in solution journalism, and I guess I have some challenges to covering recovery stories, and I guess one of the biggest issue is to avoid too much optimism, as it was mentioned before, and unfortunately I can't take one certain project or one certain project and say, yes, this is a magic pill and this is something that we can apply to every community in Ukraine. For example, last summer I was covering a story about how we in Ukraine turning war debris into a source that can be used for recovering, and yeah, it's great. It's a solution. We have some certain project in Ukraine, for example, by JICA in Borodyanka, but it's something that can't work for every community, and unfortunately, we still have this issue with laws in Ukraine because laws do not
Enough.
Enough, and I mean they are limiting opportunity to use full potential of these methods. So I can say in my text this is a solution, but I can't say like that. I need to say this is a solution, but it's not perfect, and here's why. And my second point was that me as solution journalist, I will take it to my notes. I mean, for me, it's crucial to how I show recovery through my stories to the audience. I mean, I need to say that recovery it's not only about rebuilding a buildings because recovery is a wide topic. And for example, green energy is one of the point of recovery. And talking about recovery, I need to take into account vulnerable group of people. And for example, this winter I was covering a story about Chertkiv, a small town in Ternopil region, and how they use solar energy and how solar panels are used in Chertkiv. And as for me, it's a great example of recovery stories. Chertkiv is definitely not as damaged as any other communities in Ukraine, but it's a great example how these communities now or in the future can use solar energy and sustainable practices to be ready for example, Russian attacks on our energy system. And that's it. To sum up, I wanted to say that covering recovery stories, I need to keep this balance between what we have and limits and problems. So that's it.
Thank you. And I feel like your speech, your thoughts have synchronized with what Minal previously said. Because we can see on practice how this, like Ukraine is full of imperfect solutions and it's in reconstruction topic. But we still have to report on them, and still it is like the tool how to stimulate more, to replicate good practices, and avoid mistakes. I see Minal
I just want to, because you guys are being very harsh on yourself, let's not say imperfect solutions. Maybe you can also just say that, this is a response to a challenge that we have. Because that is what it is, right? Solution can also be a very heavy word, and it can put a lot of pressure on this is the solution for something, because that's how we understand the vocabulary of this is a solution. So you're doing your best in the circumstances, with the resources and knowledge you have, without much foresight of how long the war would be, hopefully not too long, and you are responding, reconstructing, and I think I want to throw one more word here because it was interesting to hear what was spoken before, that it's not just stories of reconstruction, but I think there's also such good work that Ukrainian media is doing on talking about preservation. Like this conference has very interesting panels on preservation of culture, preservation of languages and traditions, and that's also another strategy. It may not be reconstruction in the sense of tangibly building something, but preservation is also such an important story to tell and for others to learn from you guys.
Right. I see. Like we just talked about Chertkiv as I see you wanna add something.
If I may,
please.
I can make edit here. I'm I'm from Greenpeace Ukraine, communication officer, and we run the Green Reconstruction of Ukraine since 2023. And I would like to support what Vlad said about Chertkiv and how.
For example, Greenpeace started its own job in Ukraine. Let me bring some positive stories here in this discussion. We felt the demand from Ukrainian municipalities for reconstruction. And right now, what I feel, this tendency, this trend from Ukrainian municipalities, that they want to be reconstructed even in the middle of war. For example, not only Chertkiv, but there is a very excellent municipality in Trostyanets, Sumy region. The local mayor, Yuri Bova, is a very famous guy, and he was one of the first, or he's the first mayor in Ukraine who
did for free, together with Austrian company, the full plan of green reconstruction of Trostianets. It is a city 30 kilometers far from Russia. And we as Greenpeace, we felt this energy and we invested a lot in a first multifunctional building with the heat pump in Ukraine, in Trostianets, 30 kilometers far from Russian border. And we insist to our German colleagues, to other colleagues that these people, they need support. They want it and we are ready to provide it. And don't want to focus a lot about this, but just like a trend that, in my opinion, Ukrainian media need to look and search deeper, more, not only Ukrainian but international media, for such mayors as Yuri Bova. Because many mayors and many municipalities, they are developing now very fast. And they are ready to give fast solutions and they are very flexible. And NGO in Ukraine should be very flexible, media as well. Because not every mayor in Ukraine is ready to communicate publicly, is ready to be a media star, and they don't know how to approach media. That's why, for example, me as a comms lead in Greenpeace Ukraine, as a former journalist, we are looking for these local and media stars, and we try to develop their stories to bring them abroad. For example, we did a trip for 10 Ukrainian mayors to Vienna to learn how to do the green reconstruction. And especially after this trip, Yuri Bova, when he saw this multifunctional building in Vienna with the heat pump, he said, wow, I want this in my municipality. And we did it after a few years. So let me inspire you to come to Ukrainian municipalities in different cities from Ukraine, not only on the west, in the center, in the east, in other places, find these local stars. And just like two, let's say, inspireful trends from me as well, is that women are doing great job for reconstruction. For example, Cherkiv municipality that was mentioned, the energy, energy manager of the municipality is one of the new professions right now in Ukraine, and the excellent lady Yana from Cherkiv, she does all these projects. Solar Cherkiv, for example, yeah. In 2 weeks, we will sign together with Cherkiv. There will be one of the first city in Ukraine who will sign the document. They are aimed to be a free gas city. Mm-hmm. And other women in other municipalities, they also ran these stories. And the third thing about women, let's support them in reconstruction. 2 years ago, we launched first course in Ukraine, women solar station installers. We teach 40 women how to install solar power plants in hospitals, in other critical infrastructure. So they are ready, they have certificate, but they don't feel support from energy companies and men because they are women. And again, in Cherkiv, our ladies were first ladies in Ukraine who installed solar power plants in a local hospital. And they did it well. We fight the stereotypes. Again, very good topic for the material. How women could run reconstruction despite this myth that they cannot do that because they are women, they are weak, and blah blah blah. Yeah, no, they can. We saw it. We have a lot of amazing pictures, and let's inspire people to believe more in women in Ukraine and Ukrainian municipalities. Thank you.
Can I bring
Excellent point. Yes, yeah, please.
That was actually very inspiring, and I really like that you mentioned Trostianets in Sumy region. Last year, I was reporting on a newsroom that had to be displaced from the front line in Sumy region. It's a Peremoha. I don't know if some people know about this newsroom. Actually, the chief editor joined the army. So this means 4 women from the border region had to first deal with the consequences of war in their own life. They had to uproot their lives at the border to come to Sumy city, which is, as everybody knows, not the safest city at the moment in Ukraine. And yet, day in, day out, they continued reporting on those frontline stories, which we as foreign journalists, for example, we also rely on their expertise, because they know those communities and they will know problematics that we not necessarily know from Kyiv or from other cities that are a little bit more sheltered, although we cannot say that this week. So thank you very much for this part.
And excellent points, because I think that journalists in the room can also reach then to Darina to ask about some contacts, because I also share the idea that media, or of course, for example, like independent media should be watchdogs of public spending and to ensure accountability, but still to depict some and learn some to show some case studies in order to replicate them, to share good practices, and even as you said, it can help to bring more investments, more attention to some community. So yeah, it's really the point about the role of media in this process. And I saw the head of Vita from Nakipilo, Kharkiv, please. And it is very important because we just discussed the experience of Chortkiv, but the Kharkiv is the city that is shelled and rebuilt at the same time. So how do you approach?
Hi, as Nastya said, I'm Chris from Media Nakipilo. And to the words to Darina, we're talking a lot of solar energy, and we're making a couple of materials also visiting this. And we are talking about little city in Kharkiv region. It's Zatopeg, and they are building solar systems, and it's a very nice case also to talk about them. And also we made materials about women that made this study, and they are now working as they install these panels. And it's just maybe a couple of months ago, we made also material about women who are working as civil demining. And it's all of this, it's also like our understanding about recovery, because it's not just the buildings, but obviously if there are no place to live, so people will go, or if there are no work, also people will go. But how can we manage all this process? How can we gather women on men professions? It's not very popular materials for really on our website, but there are people who saw these materials and then they thought, I can go to this to study. And it's very interesting. Women maybe 30 years old, 40 years old, who have already some professions, they can change it, and they feel that they're needed here. And one girl, she became a civil. She did this study of civil demining, and she went near to Vovchansk. And when we were making the interview, and she said, for me, it seems like I've been there before, because I saw so many times these photos, this video of this region. So for me, it's like, imagine that I've been there before, but it's the first time. And the person, she just so inspired of it, and she shared her experience, and it's really very wonderful for us as media that we can share to our readers such stories. It's inspired.
I see me now.
Thank you very much. If I understood correctly, you said that maybe some of these stories did not do very well on the website, but I just want to assure you that internationally they're doing so well, because on a magazine we published a story on demining where women had been trained and they had been taken to Kosovo, and then from there they came back, and now they're kind of doing these similar trainings for other women who are interested. And there were also stories of women who were organizing mental health sessions, etc. The examples are so many. I won't spend much time on that, but to tell you that when these stories were published, we got such good engagement. People were reading these stories, people were sharing these stories, because, and even in our newsletters, I remember that people sent us our newsletters back saying, this is so good, you should tell us more what's happening. So, to tell you that you're doing such an important work to also change the international image of how people view Ukrainian women, and how you're also documenting this very important shift in gender roles in the Ukrainian society, where women have taken on roles because of the war. So I want to compliment you that don't think that it's not doing well, because there are people outside of Ukraine who read this and who want to know more. So I hope you continue, and you as well, and everyone who's doing this topic.
Thank you very much. You know, for journalists, for our journalists, it's very important to see for them the impact and the numbers and the comments and the engagement, because for me as an editor, it's my main pain when I see that the journalist is upset that the story doesn't reach the reader, because we are doing it for our readers, obviously, not just for organizations or sometimes for our heroes, because it helps them, they feel this support, but obviously for readers to reach more people.
But still, sometimes in this topic, the outcome can be not only about quantity, but about quality of feedback. And we also had some examples from the cooperation with our network members, with media outlets. Yes, that maybe after the stories there was no big audience followed, but the real changes has come. And Emmanuel?
I just wanted to add, of course, you're publishing stories for the public, but also for your colleagues. I mean, for example, I really look up to your work. When I'm in Kharkiv, I always look at stories that you publish, because you know the region better. And I just wanted to take this time to just say how relevant and how crucial this work is, even if you think that it is not read widely. It is, because also foreigners will never have the understanding of the country that locals have. And that's why it's really interesting to read and crucial to read your work, even if you think it's not popular in the public. Believe me that it helps all of your colleagues, not just Ukrainian colleagues, but foreigners. She's the editor of one of the best sources of information in Kharkiv region. Maybe I'm not objective, but I'm the sorry to the editor. But no, really, it is crucial that people, the local people, publish those news that are then relevant also for an international audience.
And this is why regional media outlets matters, because nobody better knows context, and they provide, they're deeply rooted in their communities. Please.
I just wanted to share one story, because we're covering recovery from 2022 almost already, because Kharkiv, we have, like all Ukraine, we have no time to wait when the war stops, and then we will recover. We need to recover now, and we need to help people now. And for us, there are some buildings, there are some families that we are through the years, we are on touch with them, we are making reports, and now we are monitoring how their buildings, how their flats, how their homes are rebuilt. And it's it's a long-term story, but when we met them and they tell us that because of you, because of your publications, because that somebody saw that you public and other reporters came to us, we got home. It's rebuilt faster. And one problem is when the people are not active, it's quite for them. They wanted journalists to do this work for them, but we wanted to be like partners, not to be the leaders, because we just can highlight something, but we are waiting from them to do something. Because I think maybe a lot of them, of us, met this situation that you journalists do it for me. So no, we can just help you, we can highlight, we can talk about you, but obviously you need to do it by yourself, gather documents, and do something, make you can be active. Thank you.
Thank you. And our support team flagged me that we run out of time, unfortunately. So that is why. But yeah, I see the final remark from Artem, please.
Just, can I speak it out like this? My name is Artem. I'm just passing by, so don't mind me. I have a question for Manuel. You know, you've been working in Ukraine for quite a lot, and you shared with us your experience working in the frontline areas. You know, and we as Ukrainians as well, that we live in separate realities. I mean, Ukrainians and the Western world. So I'm curious, you know, as a person and as a journalist, as an employee working for the biggest media funder and media supporter in Ukraine, Internews Network. And can you share with us, as a journalist, your techniques? I'm sure you developed through the years your skills, techniques, methods, or tricks, or tips, or whatever. Can you share with us which you use while sharing your stories and storytelling to the Western audience?
Please.
Oh, thanks for this question. First off, you have to have a very good poker face when someone is asking you, so Sergei Lavrov just said that, what do you think? And you're here on the site of a strike or something. I think the best recommendation would be to really mind the language that's being used. It's Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. We've seen yesterday with the prospect of the creation of this special tribunal that there will be accountability being held, or there will be the possibility of holding those responsible accountable. So I very much try to highlight the illegality of this war, this illegal aspect. I very much try to always place it in context. There's no equivalence between Ukrainian strikes and Russian strikes. It's not Kyiv says and Moscow says. Those words are not equivalent, and we have to very much place that into the context. We place it in the context because more and more Russian disinformation is gaining ground also in newsrooms. There's a false equivalence that I hear more and more everywhere. This is rampant, this is dangerous, and on that level, Russia has won big time because it has played this card of disinformation for many more years than EU or the Western world has cared to also counter. And so I don't really have tips or recommendations. It's like very, very personal. But first off, try to debunk this. Try to avoid those pitfalls as equivalents. Ukrainian, for example, the strikes from Ukraine, they are on strategic military targets. They're not on civilians. This is a big difference. Russia has indiscriminate strikes. And just try to keep level-headed about it, and I personally detach myself from what I hear even in the earpiece sometimes, which can be very frustrating on the ground, and just remind some basic principles of international law, and always also talk about who is impacted. For example, and I'll finish on that, among those 24 people who died in Kyiv, there are three children, 2 teenagers who were the daughters of someone who died on the front line. There's a 12-year-old girl. If I mention a 12-year-old girl, it will be tangible for an audience where there's a lot of parents. So keep those elements in mind.
Thank you very much.
The last.
Yes.
Yeah. So, dear friends, dear speakers, dear participants, my name is Diana. I'm a member of LMF team, but now I want to share some story, not as on behalf of LMF team, but by myself. probably it may be interesting for foreign guests, for example. And you can see that recovery, it's not about some pictures of Kharkiv or Donbas region. It may seem that Lviv is a safe place, but unfortunately we don't have such places in Ukraine, and Lviv also was by rocket and by Shahed strikes. And if you notice this beautiful building right next to our location, it's round with a red roof. It looks very beautiful, and the building is quite old, but the roof looks very new. Because 2 years ago, it was actually damaged by Russian missile, and we reconstructed. And it's a story about the resilience, because life, we have only one life. Yeah, we don't have some additional or some reserve life, and we live it as much active and productive as possible. So these stories is all around us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. It was really like beautiful summarize of what we have talked about, because I think it was like the message from everyone that we cannot communicate reconstruction as post-war process, because the life has to continue, and that is why we're already doing it, and we have to find our appropriate tone of voice, appropriate language, sensitive. Also we are aware of trauma people also get, and a lot of pain is around. That is why we also should be mindful of it. But still, yeah, we have to find, look for, and help to each other also to do it. So I saw like more hands that we could bring to the spotlight. Sorry about it, but we have still the opportunity to continue with coffee to discuss and yes, to share our reflections. So please let's do it in this way, and thank you very much for being with us. And Recovery Window exists to keep this conversation going between us as media organizations, between us as also non-governmental organizations, think tanks, and international partners. So please, we are like the ecosystem to deliver after reflections to the actual results. So thank you.